Councillor Paniora, if you ever has a hand up.
Yeah, I know it's really small. That's her there. Oh, you can hear me now?
Finally hear you. It's just come back on.
Okay. Cool.
Whatever you did worked. Thank you.
All right, carry on. Right.
Right, move forward. Thanks, Catherine. Let's try and make some time up as we can. So I suggest we can jump through the next few slides pretty quickly.
Yep, I can do that. So the next slide I had was just our schedule. So you're probably becoming quite familiar with the schedule that we've got in place for you. So we've obviously completed February and we're moving through the March briefing today. And then, as I just mentioned, we are looking at quite a big set of topics to discuss in April. So probably just to draw your attention, we'll be talking about the natural hazards floods, hazards, etc. next month. And that is just because we would like to try and align getting some input from the regional council. I don't know if Mike we've had any success in getting some of the April briefing yet. But yeah, that will be a good session. And also there's a number of topics on there, including the transport infrastructure, renewable energy, clean waters, all those big heavy duty topics. So come prepared, it's going to be a big month next month. And then we'll obviously use May as a bit of a hangover month if there are topics that we need to mop up before we present the final full proposed plan to you in June. Yeah, and obviously with the council approval hopefully in July, we can notify the plan in August is what we're aiming to do. So today we're just going to step you through the district-wide matters. So Taffia is going to come up here soon and do her debut at talking about some of the district-wide matters, and I'll interject with earthworks and noise, and then I'll talk to you about hazardous substances, which shouldn't take long. The natural environment values, which will probably be the meaty part of the morning, and then we've got Jerome White joining us from Foresight to talk about the ecosystems and Indigenous biodiversity topics this morning. So, on that note, sorry. Yep, so hi, would you like to come up here and present on the light chapter? This is Ty's first time talking to elected members, so it's great. So it's a good opportunity for you to nut out some of our easier topics for the district plan reviews. This is it. So we're going to jump into part 2 district-wide matters today. And first came off the rank is our general district-wide matters, and as the name suggests, they're general district-wide matters. So the first one up is just a slide here to say. No. The previous slide just offered a capture statement as to what each chapter does. You'll notice that most of those are typically enabling until we get to GMOs, which don't allow for research indoor and prohibits all other GMO use. So that's just a little capture for you guys to check out. What does this chapter do? The next one is light. And light in the district plan, one rule around light, and it's about artificial light. So we received feedback. I'm going to take reports read, and we received feedback from 3 organisations, one EV group and 2 individuals online. Some of those statements were just around lighting on the transport network, just opposed to just lighting on the roading network, and making a differentiation between the transport network and the roading network. The next one was just some concerns around text amendments for clarity, which is basically just rewording a sentence to make it more clear. There are some concerns and some comments on managing effects on sensitive activities, coastal areas, and customary practices, and ensuring rural communities can use lighting to provide for safety and combat rural crime, as well as a comment there just talking about a proposition over using solar for street lights and about stuff over the district plan. It's a technical matter. So with all the feedback is taken into account by staff. There's no specific direction sought from members today. But do you have any comments or questions on light?
it seems to me with a lot of these issues that with the variety of comments received, that it's probably going to be possible just to weave a solution through the middle of it all without too much drama. Like there aren't too many that are directly contradictory, are there?
That's right. We're looking at very minor changes to this chapter. Lighting can get quite technical, quite probably don't think we need a really technical, convoluted rules. So we're trying to keep it pretty basic. And I guess the other point is that this is just a thing where we'll probably get some submissions. But the key is that the feedback is suggesting minor, really, and there's quite a bit of support for the objective and policy framework. So yeah, hence we don't need much direction.
Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just that last point, enable the use of solar lights for street lighting. Do we have a policy on this, or do we have something in place about the use or rating use, or want to look to more use of solar in the future, or are we just starting that journey?
So the roads that are NZTA, so state highways, they look after their own, manage their own infrastructure within the road corridor. But if it's KC, I need to check whether we've got a policy around that, but obviously somebody looks after the urban, labour, things like that. And
I'm thinking specifically of residential streets. There are many that had absolutely no lighting. Their own death traps, really.
Yeah. So additional lighting, you're suggesting?
Yeah.
Safety.
I'm just interested whether we have a policy, we have a view.
Get out for you, Councillor. I actually don't know whether we do. It's not something that our team deals with, or processes that we can talk to other departments. Most lighting typically eventuates through subdivision development, so any new development that happens in the district through the conditions of the resource consent would require street lighting at that point. But I don't know whether council actually looks after what they do with existing streets. So I'll find it out for you and come back.
But I mean, that is the major element in my mind, is the existing streets. But it's also, understanding the cost benefits or the usage benefits if indeed there are any.
Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just following on from Councillor Howard, it's an interesting point because, like with a normal conventional reticulation, the developer will be putting in the street lights as per the engineering standards, and they would have to be all viable, set to go. And then the ratepayers get to cover the ongoing costs. If we had a viable alternative, like technically, to have solar power, I presume there'd be some battery process so the lights wouldn't just go in daytime. And there weren't going to be expensive batteries to replace in the future, then it could well be that the operational costs for the ratepayers as a whole would be not increased so much. But that's something to find out in terms of the whole of life cycle, what would be the most cost-effective approach.
That's an interesting question, because I know my own house, all the way outside the lights are failed, except for the solar lights that just keep banging on. So, be interesting to find some info about that, Councillor.
Yeah, lighting is of particular interest to me. We are at a stage where we are going through a massive change in how lighting is put into developments and also in the construction industry and everything else. LEDs have been revolutionary to the whole aspect of lighting. I think we're writing legislation for incandescent bulbs, and that we're not looking at the power of LED, and most of the LED lighting now is just 12 volt, it's not on 240 volt, and that provides more lighting and no heat. We're in serious threat of having light pollution, and it's almost like a frog being boiled in a pot. Whereas once it gets in, it can't be stopped, and there's no regulations on the lumen and lighting. Now you see modern houses around who have flood-lit places that look like some space station rocket launching site in the middle of the night out in a rural The solar lights are fast to maintain those panels, the batteries, and everything else, and looking after the theft of the panels and everything from unmonitored areas is so much last decade. It's not the future decade, so we've got to be very careful on where we go with this. LED lighting is changing the planet, so to speak, and we're really going to lose our rural environment and with light pollution.
Remember, the rules in the district plan are about the clear, so it's about measuring the light from a boundary and making sure that it's within 10 marks. So it's not about the type of light that you use, it's about the light spillage.
Yes.
And a good example of that is the interface between an industrial zone and a residential zone, and making sure that people can sleep, because obviously they have big floodlights. So that's where these rules in the district plan are really important, but we don't get prescriptive about what the method is. So the questions that you've been discussing are really about what is the light bulb is the light, but we don't get prescriptive about the type of light that you cannot use in the district plan.
And changing a light bulb is a lot easier than so it's fast because people just change the light bulbs if they want more light. The other thing too is night vision is a great thing, and you'll get complaints about more and more lighting required, and that cuts down the actual ability of humans to see properly, and they want it lit up like daylight, and it's not daylight, it's night time. So I'm very concerned about this. This is a slow creep into another form of pollution that we won't be able to turn back the tide. So people get a consent, they pass that consent, a week later they change the light bulb, and all of a sudden they've got the rocket launching site out in the middle of a rural area, and there's nothing gets done about it.
Yeah, the only thing I would say about rural areas is that we do obviously want to make sure that farmers, particularly milking sheds and things, can still operate as a permitted activity with lighting requirements. But yeah, I mean, it is an issue. We talked with the previous council about the effects of, the cumulative impacts of lighting, and it is a difficult one. So the district plan is really about the measurement of light using the standards, which is an international standard, I think, or Australia and New Zealand. And yeah, just making sure that people are compliant, but taking on board, like our objective and policy framework could reflect that we want to mitigate the effects of cumulative impacts of lighting. So when planners are assessing, large scale subdivision developments, for example, what is that going to look like, and how is that going to add to what Dargaville, for example? So yeah, it's just how do we get that into rules? That's the hard thing, I think.
And of course, nobody's enforcing it because the people that enforce it don't go at night time.
Yeah.
So, I drive a regular route at night, and I think, what's that light that's glaring at me from state 14, and then I come home, there's another one glaring at me, so they're not directing it down, they're directing it out, and it's and I can see that happening more and more.
A compliance issue. It could be that they actually don't meet the requirements, don't it?
Yes.
These standards are in our plan at the moment for light. So.
Sorry, I'm holding things up. Yeah.
It'd be light.
And it was.
Completed our questions there.
I think that was very engaging. So
Thank you very much. That brought up
yeah, but it's
a discussion we probably anticipated, actually. Thank you.
okay. Move on. Leadership. So moving on to signs. Again, signs provides for manages permanent and temporary signs, and has an important part on private land. So we actually had one respondent from this. I found another one though from our fuel companies. So as well as the Waikato comment, there's also one from our fuel companies that isn't here, but Waikato just talks about their signs. They generally support the sign chapter, but they seek removal of a reference to a state highways bylaw. They support the rural sign one. Our sign, yes, standard standard one, with some amendments while noting that the standard will be realised throughout the rules. And the generally supportive of sign policy 4 with amendment regarding digital performance. And on that note, there's no direction sought from elected members because it's pretty straightforward. It just comply with the state highway, Kotahi managers, and the fuel companies is just around their display of their big signs and the fuel prices and stuff. So it's just minor amendments to work through and nothing too much else to do.
Unless elected members have.
Unless there's
That's what take it on board.
A quick one. Will these be enforced retrospectively, or if a sign is in existence now, that remain?
Do you mean a legal sign that's legal now, or
One that's been there for 50 years,
right?
and if it doesn't meet the standard or the rules, will that person or that company be directed to take it down?
Well, generally, if it's put in place under a previous district plan, if it complies with that district plan, it has existing use rights for that.
Thank you.
So if it was legally put in, then it should be okay. If they go and change it and make it bigger or smaller or whatever, then the new rules would apply once. And remember, that's once these rules become operative, not once we notify the plan later.
So where I'm coming from, if something's been there for 30 years prior to any other district plan, then there's a lot of value in that because it can't be changed.
Yes, yep, that's where existing use rights.
Thank you.
Further questions?
Yeah, if that helps. Cool. Any other questions on the signs? No.
No. Thank you.
All right. Next favourite topic. Fine.
And the next general district matter is temporary activities. Provides board managers the effects of temporary activities. We received three submissions from respondents, and there was one proposal to delete the chapter and manage under council bylaws. There's one proposal to amend temp Rule 1A, and that rule reduces the number of temporary events implemented on a site from club events to 3 events, and the submitter proposes to instead retain operative provision instead, which allows for monthly events to occur. So yes, is there any comments or questions on temporary activities?
What I find interesting about that is you've got here, it's just a number of temporary events permitted on the site from 12 events to 3 events. So how does that affect things like markets and stuff? Is that outside that or?
Yeah, that was the main concern of the submitter. They were wanting things like monthly farm markets to be able to operate as permitted activities. The rule means that traffic can be managed for activities that are more than 3 activities in 1 year. So if you want to monthly farmers market, there would need to be transport and other safety elements around it that need to be assessed for it to be consented.
Yeah, I think to respond to that, I would probably be a little bit concerned about reducing it from 12 events to 3 as the has suggested.
It just seems to me like the biggest complaint I get from ratepayers is compliance issues, the repeating of filling in forms and doing stuff. So if something's been an activity that everyone enjoys, surely they should have a simplistic template for that, right?
I think the problem at the moment, Your Worship, with the operative district plan is there's no specific rule for temporary activities because it's an effects-based plan. So while there is triggering there for monthly events, it's still not capturing all the effects that are associated with temporary activities. So having a rule in the plan just helps guide people that are wanting to set up like a northern base or a field days event, those types of things that are temporary. And I think we also included a provision for temporary like rural motorsport activities as well, like thinking about the motorcycle clubs and things that do, BMX biking and all those types of things. So yeah, just to broaden the district plan to cover those issues, so that it was clearer And so we're trying to make this rule as enabling as possible, but also bearing in mind that there are sometimes a lot of effects, including noise and traffic movement or management associated with temporary activity. So it depends on the scale. If it's just a monthly market, obviously they still need to manage traffic, etc. So base, nobody has an issue with noise, but as soon as evening, festivals and night markets and things like that, it could be a different kettle of fish.
I'll just test the thought that anyone in the district trying to do particularly community is put off doing them because of a raft of rules and obstacles that mean they walk away.
Yeah, totally hear that. So we will look at those rules again and see if there's any sort of push-ups in there based on what the respondents have said. Is that something we want to work with, or is it something we can meet halfway? And we will bring those proposed amendments back to council in due course.
Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would thought there'd be a division between if it's not in a public place, that a bylaws approach would be appropriate, and if it's on private property, district plan provisions. I just think because it's some temporary activities which might be entirely, say, on a council reserve or whatever.
Yeah.
Say, or like the Kyoga Lakes Triathlon or something like that, which is partly on roads and so on. And if as long as the bylaws approach was simpler than the district plan thing.
And the other option, as well as reserve management plans, can actually take care of temporary activities as well. So we don't have a lot of reserve management plans for Clarkby yet. So I think like 2 or 3. So that's another way. But obviously we don't have a bylaw at the moment. So we're just looking obviously at our work. The policy team would look at a bylaw for that. But yeah, I think activities in public spaces, like council and etc., are a little bit more tricky, and maybe we need to pull them out or find a way of dealing with them. But at the moment, we didn't have the tools like bylaw to factor that into our considerations. So we can have a look at that and see.
I mean, I sympathise with what the minister's saying, and if we can find it more straightforward. But obviously, things need to be safe. Traffic would be the main concern. I know with Pepperell Market, they're trying to get a trained estimates to take over the putting up the cone.
Oh yes, yeah, because that would be in the market at Pepperell.
Market's on the car park, so it's public.
Yeah.
But the thing is that the parking is all on the state highway.
Yeah. I'll have a look at the bylaw situation and see what we can come up with. But at this stage, we don't have anything I'm aware of that would help with this temporary activities rule.
Councillor Lambeth.
Just one little thing. I'll use the example just here, the machinery club. They're operating there. They may have a startup day once every 6 months, which is a larger activity than what they're doing. Do they get captured by this?
They would, because Harding Park has a reserve management plan, isn't it? It's got its own governance structure and rules in place for it. I would assume.
Okay, probably not the wrong example to use, but if somebody's got a normal business practice, but then they so say the warehouse and they open out onto the car park to use certain things and have a festival day there, which increases their business, would that be captured under this, or do you just not worry about it? It's just their normal practice?
It probably would be a temporary activity, especially if it's going to trigger any things in it. So I guess, yeah, because it's not. It's like thinking about the Culinary Museum, for example. They have their settlers day,
Yes.
year, and they spill out onto the road, and and it's a huge event, right? So I'm not anticipating that they would need a consent for it every time. So those are the sorts of things we want to try and enable and encourage about issues. So yeah, I guess it's just about differentiating the bigger activities from those that are not going to generate.
Along the same lines as me, I don't want people to be penalised for success, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Council of Vincent's comment around the Kaporoa market, there is actually in the permitted rules, the site actually can't be a direct site access from the state highway. So in that case, under these rules, Kaporoa market wouldn't be a permitted activity.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So yeah, that's kind
Makes sense.
of talking about farmers markets.
Worldview, yes.
Those are sort of things I'm worried about. If you know what I mean.
We'll keep working on that one. See if we can perhaps bring you back a bit of an example of what they're thinking.
The Pepper market have existing use rights.
Very good question.
I think, yeah,
Whatever.
Or we're like
they have some, I'm pretty sure they have vacancy from the council or something.
The traffic
Excellent.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to come back to GMOs shortly.
I'll just say that.
Okay. All right. So earthworks is always an exciting topic of conversation, and I'm sure there's been a lot of that going on in the district since Cyclone Gabrielle. So look, there were a few submissions on this, and mostly seeking amendments to the earthworks provisions. So 32 submissions on that, and most in support, and a lot seeking amendments. I think the main points was really just consistency with the regional plan. So trying to get the rules as consistent with the Northern Regional plan as possible, which we have tried to do. And then there were a lot of other comments in terms of terminology that's used for being consistent. So there's a bit of tidy up work that we need to do on this chapter in particular. Probably the fundamental thing that we need to look at is earthwork areas and volumes that have been applied in the chapter. Remember, it was just a draft district plan, so we just wanted to test the water and see what the response was. A lot of politicians have said in the urban zones, so the medium density, low density commercial zones, the requirements are too restrictive. So we will have a look at that because I think it was only 200 or 250 cubic metres, which is not a lot of earthworks in those zones. Bearing in mind that a site was obviously 500 square metres in the medium density zone. So we've got a little bit of work to do there. There were some specific comments from some of the providers, particularly the infrastructure providers like Transpower and North Power, making sure that the provisions are fit for their needs, and also the Mangataroto Dairy Factory, who have got a wastewater pipeline that's corridor that runs along the river there. So we'll have a look at that and see what we can do there. There were quite a few comments about or concerns raised in respect to the management of earthworks and the way that it can cause downstream flooding and the amendment of overland flooding. So that's good feedback as far as making sure the rules do control. Landfill was an interesting one which we get a bit of feedback on because landfill is often used in many rural sites. So the comments there were just really about putting in place some setbacks and making sure they're not encroaching on sensitive activities, etc. The other thing about the earthwork rules is that we have included quarrying and mining activities within those same rules. So we need to do a bit more work differentiating those activities. Yeah, what's earthworks and what is quarrying and mining, so there's no confusion on that front. And then there was a couple of comments on the transport of quarrying materials. So I think those are the kind of key bits that I wanted to highlight for the lecture members. You've obviously got the paper that we've provided here. So our work going forward is really to make sure we're trying to get some alignment with the Northern Regional Council regional plan, and to review those volumes and to make sure that we're providing realistic but enabling provisions in the earthwork space that also do the job of protecting other properties from the diversion of overland flow paths and sure we're not flooding out other people's property by doing that. There's just one more point to note, which is at the bottom of page 16 of the agenda there, which is just about there has been some shift in the issue of Kauri dieback, and the MPI have been working with councils to try and get provisions into district plans, and we probably will face similar to Whakaari submissions wanting provisions in the district plan on earthwork rules, and that's really about doing earthworks too close to the base of the Kauri. And so we haven't got anything in the draft plan. Work in the pipeline as we're kind of progressing the plan. But be interested to hear from elected members today whether they support us developing rules to put into the proposed district plan or leave the door open for submissions, because we know we will get them from and probably MPI as well. And we have not developed any rules in that space yet, but we could do. It's just the rules that came out from Whakaari were quite convoluted. It's whether we want to go down that pathway as well before we notify our proposed plan.
I have a question here from Councillor Penny-O'Rourke.
Thank you, through the chair. I think that that's a good move to begin developing rules, district plan rules around that. I'm very much in support. Yeah, obviously being of Te Roro heritage, but also like the wider significance of our kauri trees and Tāne Mahuta for tourism in this area, and also a lot of the development that Te Roro are doing to bring in more tourism. So there's a lot of work going on in that area, and kauri dieback is a major threat. So I think that we should be taking a leadership role in that.
Thank you, Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just on the 2 points I have, the first one on the kauri dieback, with respect to what Councillor Penny-O'Rourke said, we haven't done anything specifically on kauri dieback for whatever reasons. I would have thought that the main protocols and strategies are being set by MPI in the first instance. If we have an issue with MPI or DOC, that's time to raise it. But other than that, we should take, I would think, their lead. There may be some holes in that. The other query I had is that you're talking about all sorts of physical elements of earthworks. Is there anything in our papers that cover the ability of operators to be able to complete those jobs proficiently, i.e. their professionalism, is there a register, without wanting to go and add in more unnecessary bureaucracy, but do we have a form of registration of operators in this area? So people in the community, if they need some work done, they know who is recommended, etc. But there are standards of involvement. There are people that do work that don't know what they're doing. There are people that do work that are absolutely proficient and can be relied upon. So surely hand in hand is a form of registration.
Yeah, look, I haven't heard of any registration. There's obviously industry best practice, and I think Michael, if I'm right, the regional council, because they do manage earthworks also, I could be wrong, but do they run courses for operators to bring them up to speed with the requirements of the regional plan? Like that used to happen down at Waikato, so I don't know if they do it.
So the chair, yes, they do that. Tends to be focused on the large scale regional earthworks, the volumes of 5,000 cubic metres plus. So not the smaller scale urban earthworks, but the larger volumes. But yes, they do. Workshops for practitioners practitioners.
Yeah, so I think that's one avenue, but I don't know whether there's like a registration across Northern. I'd say there's cowboys and then there's the good operators, like you say. And council, you know, Clapper doesn't have a register of who's doing what out there. It is kind of an industry, you know, no different to other professions, I guess, or trades. But yeah, look, I don't know if there's.
But if I may extend, and I use an example, we were out during as a result of the weather bomb on the east, and Shane Cullen came and checked out a major slip, and he made reference to he'd been asking council to do for some time registration to stop cowboys. You know, his words. Now, Shane is a very well respected operator, you know, if not the best in the area. So he's been making overtures. Should we be listening to like to those people, like the leaders?
So, to me, if I just you talk about registration or maybe accreditation.
Oh, accreditation, yeah.
That's actually pass the test and those demonstrate they know the rules and also that they are technically competent. That may serve a purpose if it was a fast track for someone rather than like certain things are permitted provided they are carried out by an accredited operator, say. It's not a whole can of worms, isn't it, really?
Well, yeah, I've been on the other side of the fence for years, you know, we get like digger. Most of what you can do is pretty straightforward, particularly, and you can still follow the consent rules that are there. So, you know, it's a tricky one to define because, you know, you don't want to stop people being entrepreneurial, particularly on their own land. But maybe there's specific works, you know, that require that someone who actually has done that before, methodology that works to, you know, ensure it's safe and long term is appropriate. Councillor Knapp.
Yeah, it follows on very much from that. In years gone by, the people in authority would look closely at people who misbehaved and tend to let the ones who had a good reputation go. So it was unofficially done. But as pressure comes on a little bit more, they can't do that as much. My big concern is that for a standard residential house, we don't want to trigger an earthwork, another resource consent for an earthworks. When we start talking about floor being brought in and topsoil being scraped back and moved and all that, sometimes it gets very tricky as far as planners getting involved in what is just a standard building consent, and we've got to avoid that. You know, the building consents there. I know that the Far North District Council have just a small application for earthworks rather than a full resource consent. We don't want to push these on to resource consent all the time. Just if you could answer me one question, is it volume per year?
Generally, yes.
Right. So we start our earthworks, say it's 250 cubic metres. We start that on Friday and we finish off 500 on Monday. And they say our year was 1 year previous, 1 year in the future. And it's perfectly legal. So, yeah, so
the tricky one. The cumulative impact. 200 a year, 200 a year, that type of thing.
Yeah. But there's no determination of where that year should be.
Yeah, then you could say within a 10-year time frame, and it gets tricky as well because
we take that on board and totally hear Councillor Lambert's points. We definitely don't want to require extra consents for earthworks in urban areas where we don't need to. One exemption I would mention is if people are undertaking earthworks to build your houses in floodplains and they are building up floodplains, there's that potential to divert the flood flow onto neighbouring properties. That needs close looking at.
Sorry, you just supplement your question right on that subject.
Not my job.
Okay.
Because what the definition of the current district plan is, I've just deemed timber foundations now. They're ruling that as excavation, where it's not changing the level of the flow of the earth. So that's what I'm saying. If we could get rid of those trickiness interpretations, and that's going to come down to our appendixes and everything else.
Thank you.
Thank you. Glad to hear you speaking about people diverting flood onto other people's properties. Real big issue. Yeah. I like it. Yeah. I hope that can be helped. What I wanted to go back to was the Cody dieback question. When we met at our retreat, we collectively decided one of our community outcomes is healthy environment. So I really believe that anything that we can do to facilitate that and be proactive in that space is absolutely wonderful. Cody is Northland's special. It isn't like we have a responsibility as in the roles that we have, I believe, to be looking after something as important as the Cody trees. And so yeah, I would be really keen to see.
Through the chair, if I could respond, the team hear that. My response is we need to treat quite cautiously. The recent case in Whangarei included backyard Cody tree, and they got so tied up in knots that essentially if you were digging a hole in your backyard close to a Cody, you needed the consent. We don't really want that, so we just need to tread cautiously through this.
Yes. But we don't want that, but we need to do what we can to prevent and limit the spread of Cody dieback.
Absolutely.
Councillor Vincent, do you have
I did actually see other two Mr. Mendelsohn's also. No, I'm just it's a processing really. This memo from Nicole here in McGrath, who provide a summary on the earthworks issues. And we go down the page to the submission on behalf of the Rise Limited, proposed by Melissa McGrath. So she's providing a summary of feedback on a submission that she's made.
So through the chair, the Rise is a private plan change that we have received. So council has received that private plan change.
Yeah.
And so she's
acting for
the applicant for the Rise Limited as well.
And she's also acting for the council on this. Isn't that what you'd call a conflict of interest, or is it not relevant in this?
So at this stage, it's the draft and formal plans. There's no conflict at this stage. No.
Okay, it just didn't sit comfortably with me. That's all.
Councillor Mendelsohn?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I just comment on the Cowrie dieback disease. I think the council is being asked here to consider matters well outside their expertise. As I understand, Cowrie forests are actually the end vegetation of a 20,000 year cycle, and the death of the Cowrie tree is rather inevitable. We would not have the pans in the Tikopuru and the other soils unless the Cowrie was a 20,000 year crop that's happened maybe 1,000 times in the history of the earth. And if we get into the legislating that we're going to protect the inevitable, I think we're stepping outside our expertise.
Thank you. Any further questions? All right.
Okay. I'll box on with noise now and just talk you through the feedback received on the noise provisions. So there were quite a number of responses to the noise submissions, to the noise chapter as well, which was probably inevitable. And that's to do with works on here, sorry about that. So just to check my numbers there, we've got 29, I think was a mistake in the briefing paper, apologies, we didn't count 29, so I think it was 22 submissions received. And then we had 12 that were in support of the noise provisions and 16 which sought amendments. So I think the key thing about the noise provisions is, I mean, obviously they're there to try and control noise generating activities, and particularly energy reverse issues on sensitive environments or sensitive activities. So some of the feedback did request that we look at the terminology that we're using. There was a few inconsistencies between noise sensitive activity and sensitive activity, so look at that. We did get some good feedback from the Agricultural Aviation Association and Skywork Helicopters, and it was really good to hear from them because we hadn't recognised agricultural aviation activities for primary production and conservation activities, which happens regularly across Kaipara. So I'd actually had a good chat to them on the phone before they put their feedback in. So we will look at some provisions that make sure that they can operate effectively in the Kaipara. Some exemptions that have been sought from the Fonterra Dairy Factory at Mangatoroto, they'd like a noise sensitive area to avoid reverse sensitivity effects there. At the moment, we do have some standards for their site, so we will look at that. But of course, you know, they're wanting to make sure that any new buildings are acoustically insulated if they come into that buffer area. Yeah, the other one that I've highlighted here is just support the use of emergency sirens, because obviously this is pretty important for emergency operations, etc. Making sure they can operate at ease. Yeah, and I guess there were quite a lot of errors in the chapter. That was probably my mistake. Cross-referencing fixing, so we will do that. But yeah, we basically just need to make amendments. I think probably the key point that I wanted to just highlight to elected members today, which was a discussion that we did have with our previous elected members, is the final point on page 20 there, which is the feedback from Motu Kotahi and KiwiRail, which is quite a lengthy piece of feedback. But effectively what Motu Kotahi and KiwiRail are looking for is a set of provisions that mean that there would be a setback on state highways or along the KiwiRail corridor that require any new buildings or alterations, additions sometimes, to acoustically insulate. And obviously that adds a lot of cost to building and to people that are doing the building works in there. And as you'll know, the two state highways that run through, three state highways that run through our district. So Kaiwaka, Mangatoroto, Paparoa, Ruai, Dargaville would all be impacted, Tangatoroa as well there. So we need to tread carefully with this, and I guess I'd really be keen to get some feedback from this council as to who want it, because the previous elected members decided that unless we had sufficient evidence from those agencies that we would hold fire and deal with it through submissions. We do know that the Whangarei case has just reached a decision. It's quite a lengthy decision, and we didn't include it, but there is a reference there if you want to check it out. But it basically draws the setbacks across a lot of their zoning in Whangarei, and it will have quite huge implications for Whangarei. So we just don't want to go down that road too soon. So I'd be really keen to get some feedback. And just so you know, so the noise provisions are obviously about the management of noise and the volume of noise and dBA limits, etc. These requirements that KiwiRail and Motu Kotahi are seeking are setbacks. So it's a setback requiring an acoustic insulation. So if we were to put the plan, they wouldn't necessarily live in the noise chapter, but they are a noise issue. So it's about dealing with reverse sensitivity effects. So yeah, that's
Have you ever tried to get an acoustic engineer to design a house? The fee is astronomical, $30,000 to $40,000 to get an acoustic engineer. Delay of probably a year to 18 months. It'll kill us. It'll kill us today. So it's a big no-no. For me, it's just ridiculous. A person who builds a house, they know a state highway is here. I don't care about reverse sensitivity. It's just.
Yeah, staff agree as well, which is why it's not in the draft plan.
Yeah. So I would really object to any venture down that track.
This relates to, a push to get smaller lots in the rural areas as well, where, we need to consider new lots have covenants where they can't object to cows moving and motorbikes rounding them up and all that stuff. If you buy an environment next to a railway line, what do you expect?
Yeah.
So thanks, Mark. That's about that.
Yeah, clear for us. Yep.
Any further questions?
All right, we will carry on to GMOs. Back to Tanya.
So yeah, as described previously, GMOs, the GMO chapter only provides for indoor research on GMOs and it prohibits outdoor use of GMOs. We received 49 submissions on GMOs and 34 submissions were in support of our approach and 15 sought amendment to KEX only. The majority of the submissions supported our precautionary approach in line with other councils in the northern region, and the amendment that was sought was just to make the wording consistent around GMO for people. GMO for it's just some loose wording around to be consistent with Northern Regional Council's wording around GMOs. So it's not too much to change there. And there's comments and questions, discussion on the matter.
Questions, comments there? No, thank you.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Councillor Lewis.
Since there's a little void there, it seems that we're generally falling in line with the other councils in Northland, aren't we?
That's right. Yeah.
The chair, it's consistent with Auckland, but so it's that consistent approach and the regional councils.
Which is good because we don't really want to go over that can of worms all over again, do we? Okay. Thank you.
That's the end of my presenting.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. All right. I'm just going to quickly with your permission.
Thank you.
So hazardous substances. This was a topic that I've been pretty involved in for a long time, and we got a little bit of feedback from some of this on the hazardous substances. So it's a bit of a mixed bag actually, and so I am seeking some direction from elected members today. Some of the submitters did support what we've put into the proposed plan, and some of the submitters want quite significant amendments, and then we had quite a few submitters that wanted us to delete provisions or use other councils' provisions. So just to set the scene in this space, many of you may know that hazardous substances are regulated under other legislation aside from the Resource Management Act. So the main pieces of legislation is obviously the Hazardous Substances and New Organisms Act and also the Health and Safety at Work Act. So the Ministry for the Environment a couple of years ago pulled out councils' explicit functions to manage hazardous substances under the Resource Management Act. But that doesn't mean that we still can't have rules in our district plan to make sure that we're managing any effects, particularly on sensitive land use activities from the use of hazardous substances. So these are the legislative requirements to look after the nuts and bolts, how the substances are regulated and used, etc., and how they're managed in a work environment. But what they don't do is look after the use of hazardous substances in the land use context. Trying to do with the rules in this district plan is to make sure that if there are any facilities that decide to set up in Kaipara, that we do have provisions in our district plan and that we do govern, what we'd like to see in terms of, some clear objectives and policies, obviously, to protect public safety and the environment, but also, just be clear that we do want to manage it. So the previous council, we did have a technical advisor, Norbert, who's a specialist in this space. He did provide some guidance in the previous council that they would like. Hazardous substances regulated in the district plan. I'm bringing it back to this council just to ask the same question effectively, because our recommendation is that we do, but we do have the flexibility to not have rules in the plan if we don't want to. And I guess it's a question of whether we would feel comfortable if we didn't have anything in the district plan, would we be comfortable with a major hazardous facility did set up? And I'm just using an example of a heavy industry or like a fireworks manufacturing company or something that used hazardous substances, and there might be a risk to people in the environment if we were to establish, if we have no way of managing that through district planning or land use planning, then we have to be comfortable with that. So the direction I'm seeking today is just whether you're comfortable that we should continue with the draft rules as we've proposed them, obviously with amendments as per the submissions received, or whether we should take a different approach. And my recommendation would be to carry on, but it's in your hands, so I'll leave it for you.
Can I just ask how much of that sphere is dominated by NRC? Because they're obviously, you're talking mainly emissions, don't you?
No, so hazardous substances could be like the main issue when something goes wrong is usually it lands on the ground. So regional council are usually the first ones to respond if it's a spill, but if it's something more major like a fire or an explosion or something like that, then district council wants to make sure that we're not putting people in harm's way, if that makes sense, through controls.
Could be fuel as well as a whole heap.
Right, Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I could just follow on from what you were getting at there, I think it was like, is this aspect already covered by other agencies under existing legislation? Because it's not just the OSH legislation, well, it's like health and safety, but also the hazardous substances and organisms act.
Yeah.
And possibly other sources of rules as well. If we're just piling on top of everybody else, if we could take that example of say, some sort of a hazardous installation being established, if it was caught by our rules, would it also be caught by regional council rules or some other agency that having to control the thing, which would be a process which the council as a stakeholder could be involved in anyway.
At the moment, the regional plan doesn't have any specific rules relating to hazardous substances. So if the district councils for land use activities, so at the moment there would be no process for us to be involved in. It would be a permitted activity under a regional plan.
But just to clarify, if I just pause you for a moment, just to clarify the mayor's question, then it wouldn't be that if someone wanted to establish such an activity, they wouldn't be needing to go to the regional council to get permission.
No, couldn't. No, but if there's an incident, like let's say a fuel tanker blows up on the road or the highway, regional council do. I like the ambulance on the cliff incident. So they do have a spills and managing discharge into waterways, etc., because that's their function. But they don't have any rules for the ambulance at the top of the cliff to manage those activities in the first place. So that's where councils can play a role. But we don't have that function anymore. That's that say we need to manage hazardous substances, but under Part 2 of the Act, we do have an obligation to manage people's health, safety and the environment. So that's where we can say, we do have a function, and I would argue for sensitive activities, like land use activities, you don't want a chemical manufacturing warehouse within a radius of people, that could,
or LGB,
or could be, adversely affected.
LPG tanks, say, adjacent to an apartment building or something.
Yeah.
So just to clarify that, then if those responsibilities have been taken off us, who's picked them up?
So nobody's picked up the land use functions, and that's the gap in the legislation at the moment. So we've got the health and safety at work. They manage the site, so they manage the effects of the site, as in the day-to-day management of those chemicals on site at your place of work as a PBU or
PCPU.
And then you've got the actual legislation of hazardous substances and new organisms is managed by the EPA, who look after the regulation of those chemicals. So they will say, yes, we are comfortable with that particular quantity, and those they do all the stickers and all the classifications, categories, and all of that stuff. Whereas there's nobody that manages the land use, and that's our function. And so we should, I believe we should have a say as to where those things go in our district. If you can imagine, and I think Norbert actually used this example last time, what happened at Ruakaka, where there was a big issue, and obviously there's a clean-up involved in that. We need to be across that, otherwise, people will look at council and say, well, why don't they do anything? So I think there is a place for us to manage those larger scale activities, but also, where things like service stations go, you might know the one at Kaiwaka that's gone in most of the time underground storage, which is pretty good. If they're above ground storage, there is a risk associated with those tanks.
So, through the chair, to sum it up, there's no explicit requirement under legislation for council to manage these types of activities. Catherine's recommendation is that we should, because of the reasons she's outlined, but we're asking for your direction, whether you want us to or not.
Yes, please.
We probably had this discussion 6 months ago as well, didn't we, in the previous council, to get to that conclusion.
Yes, and I do apologise. We had a technical expert last time who probably articulated it a little bit better than I can, but I would recommend probably, at least for the proposed plan, put something in the plan, and we can manage it through the submission process. We know the key players like Federated Farmers, Sport New Zealand, the oil industries, they will come to the table, and they will fight us on what we have in our plan. But I think if we've got a good starting point, we will see where we take that. And I've been involved in that at Waikato, and look, the outcome of the Waikato provisions is not a good example. The commissioners lost sight of the scope of what they were working under, and I don't feel like that's so much justice, but that's only my opinion. So, we haven't really got another good council to follow. Whangarei are doing their plan change at the moment, so we're watching that to see what they have. I didn't necessarily agree with what they put in their plan, but we'll see how that goes through its process. But I would suggest for us that we put something in the plan. So, thank you.
My fear is that we get private residents with this, with the fuel containers, the gas bottles alike in the garage, and then we go down the avenue of getting every farm. Because I'm pretty sure besides radioactive, probably every farmer has got that whole array of stuff.
So they're all exempt, council.
Okay.
So anything of a household domestic quantity is exempt, and farms up to a certain volume, like if you're storing massive amounts of something, then you might trigger a requirement. But one of the arguments from the Horticulture New Zealand farmers, I think, was that they're only storing for an intermittent period, and then they distribute it into a helicopter. And it goes across the
I'm not too worried about the commercial operate. But the biggest thing that I worry about now are storage facilities. No idea what's in there. And it was exemplified with that example down in Wellington where the storage facility got out of control and nobody knew what the heck was happening because there was no, so, but that is a commercial entity. But it's a domestic storage, so it's those are little things where it can really hurt people in the district. But so.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Councillor Lambert's point there, and we do see proliferation of commercial storage facilities, but I would think that we can do a pretty simple rule regulation incumbent, making it incumbent on the owners, operators of those facilities to be aware and of their own responsibilities to safeguard and what is not permitted in those.
Sorry, they do have their rules, and they do. Nobody's monitoring what goes in and what container or anything like that. So the individuals are breaching the rules, which is not responsible.
That would be a health and safety at work issue because that's about the management of the substances. So yeah.
Okay. Any further statements, questions? Keep going.
So just a quick note on the contaminated land. We did get general support for the contaminated land provisions there, and you might note that we don't have any rules in the plan for this. It's just objectives and policies, and the feedback that we did get was really just a few minor amendments. So, so not looking for any specific direction on that today, just to make you aware that we have some objectives and policies around that, but largely it's governed by the National Environmental Processing and Packaging Contaminants and Soil Human Health. So we don't get tied up in it, and we don't want to duplicate any real provisions in the air. So pretty straightforward. Contaminated land.
Councillor Lambert?
It's been managed to work with the hail sites. It's working well, is it?
I believe so.
From what I gather, it has been. So it's really not. It's not a fixed broken wheel, isn't it? Really.
I think any subdivision or change in use would trigger the NES anyway. So if there is a house site established through that goes onto the register, and it gets managed through the register, and any site that's contaminated be discussed through that application. Generally get remediated or figure out a way to mitigate the effects of any contamination.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
A little bit so we can catch up. Paul, would you like to come up here and perhaps talk about the natural environment values?
Is that values or just be good?
Yeah, that's values.
It's pretty good.
Right, the floor is yours, Paul.
Your worship, councillors, the matter that has been discussed in the past several times. I'm not going to go much detail. We have to remember that the coastal area was the first area that had a national policy statement. It has been changed in 2000, and that is still applicable to be used. And in New Zealand, the coastal area has special value to the inhabitants. Now, the coastal environment, the operative district plan has got a vast area that is shown as coastal overlays. That was identified as using the catchment areas as such. In the meantime, the regional policy statement or the regional council has mapped the coastal area, which is the true coastal area with the set of criteria. Those maps we have been using, and those maps we are using in our district plan as well. That went through particular court cases, and that was established to be the correct line. The important aspect is that there is also the matter of the natural character areas. Strictly speaking, is the coastal natural character area, because that is all part of the original of the national policy statement. Now, as I say, we have the original mapping of the coastal area, and the operative plan covers about 12% of the district.
Which I think is close to 20% of the district.
Okay.
Coastal overlays and
I wrote down 19%, and then I went back to some memos, but it has now, with the new lines, it is about 8.6% that is covered by the coastal environment. As I say, that the regional, that the RMA requires us to map the natural character areas as well. That was never mapped in the operative plan. The regional council has mapped those particular aspects through a very intensive process and identified those areas. Some of them are high character areas, and some are outstanding character areas, and our particular definitions according to those. We have not changed any of that. We are using those in the coming from the regional policy statement. Remember, the regional policy statement does not have rules. So in the district plan, we have to say what you can or cannot do within those natural character areas.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Just for clarity, natural character areas. What do we define specific? I mean, you know, please give me examples so I can understand.
The important is within the coastal area, there are certain objects or environments that actually identify and highlight the coastal area. That could be even a boat shed. It could be a type of vegetation that is a little bit different because it's on the coast and say 300 meters inwards. Those were identified, and site visits were done to identify those as being outstanding or high character areas.
So through the chair, basically it's unmodified areas. In very simple terms, it's areas that have not been modified, have been modified to a very minimal extent. Very simple terms.
So it is special areas in the coastal area.
Thank you.
Right. So yeah. So this was out for feedback, and we got some feedback. 17 submissions were received, 8 submissions were in support, and 9 sought certain amendments. The most of those amendments we can deal with the Section 32, and I'm not going to discuss those. However, one of the aspects deals with rivers, wetlands, and those type of things. Now, at this particular point in time, the rivers and wetlands are being investigated by the regional council in terms of the national policy statement of fresh water. That also includes, and they have gone through a high court case, those aspects, wetlands, etc., in the coastal area. We have not identified these particular areas as part of the natural character areas, but we have started to identify them in the ecological areas. We'll come back to the ecological areas a little later. We will have to take a decision if we are going to map those as natural character areas or if we are going to map them as ecological areas. I have no issue that we should map those. The NES specific said, although it's a function of the regional council to identify them, they have to go into the regional plans as well as the district plans. So we will enter them into the district plan. We will decide if it's going to be natural character area or that it is going to be in the ecological areas. One of the questions, and that comes through in all of the landscape aspects, deals with how do we deal with infrastructure within those particular areas, and we will answer those questions through the section 32. In some cases it should be underground, some cases it's above ground, and there would be certain requirements regarding to maintenance.
Yeah, so for the chair, in simple terms here, the infrastructure providers through their feedback have said, hey, we want a permitted pathway to maintain our infrastructure in any of these special or significant areas. There's probably a lot of value in doing that, in my opinion. I'm happy to work through that, but it's going back to our whole idea of a simple enabling plan. It seems to be quite a suggestion from my perspective.
And we will address those in the particular section 32, as well as make provisions for that in the provisions of these particular areas. The next one deals actually with, as a theme throughout the plan, is to have consistent language, land use, or Maori purpose activities. How we're going to deal with those, we will sort that out with iwi. What is the preferred wording that we should use? And then also the question arose about fencing of these. Now we're talking about the coastal environment, natural character areas. The fencing of those, we will look at what these exclusion regulations require from us, or if those regulations are sufficient enough. Question is if that should be in the plan or not. We will investigate and make provision for those particular aspects. But that's the coastal area and the natural character areas.
Through the chair. I'm not aware of what happened in the far north with these natural character areas of significant. Yes. Yes. Now I'm just wondering about that. How much of private farmland is being included, especially with that last area there? If it is included and you're eliminating them from farming land they own, are they expected to still pay rates and maintain that land? What sort of percentage of land are we looking at which is going to be included in this? And then,
yeah, so through the chair, we are not stymieing any farming activity. We're not proposing to stymie any farming activities unless your direction is that you want us to do that. Then we're not proposing to do that.
So, in light of that, why do we need that last paragraph there, review fencing provisions?
Because unfortunately the stock exclusion regulations require us to have a look at that. Primarily as a regional council function, it's a small ancillary function for us to have a look at.
Yeah.
Primarily, so it primarily relates to stock exclusion from waterways and wetlands, and it's primarily a regional council function.
So, Councillor Manderson, next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. Specifically, I see here in number 2, you refer to you'll decide the interpretation by consulting with iwi. Now, I struggle to understand why the consultation should be with a minority group. And now I'll make a more general comment that at the moment, we are facing a problem in New Zealand of having been a land-based country of years with the predominance of agricultural farming, we are in a transition phase, and every regulation that you raise is a disincentive to another generation to become involved with the land. And so every legislation item that you raise to protect the land, in actual fact, more likely damages it, because we do not have fit, young, motivated people coming through in significant numbers to manage that land. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to the previous point regarding the fencing provisions, to Michael's comments here, if indeed they are the responsibility of the regional council to the greatest degree, as you said, why do we have it there? I mean, if it's not our responsibility, let's, let's get rid of it.
We haven't put them in, but we will see what the regulations eventually will require.
Are we being used as the enforcer of this by the regional council?
It is if the legislation requires, but we don't want, if it's not required, we're not going to put it in.
Move on. Yep.
Right, the next item deals with the natural environment values, the natural, which we call outstanding natural features and outstanding landscapes. Now, the landscapes in the district plan, in the operative district plan, is being rolled over, with the exception of one area which we added, which is Sentinel Hill at the Surf Club in Mangawhai. That's the only change. For the rest, it is exactly the same as it was previously. Those were mapped very thoroughly by an expert as part of a court case that KDC was involved in. So they remain exactly the same as which they were previously. The features is a new element that we bring in, and we have been using the regional council consultants and appointed a consultant to check those again. And we have proposed there are 32 of these outstanding natural features. These are like Toka Toka, Mangarau, and those particular places that have been identified. We have had public meetings about them, and we have consulted with the affected landowners on that particular aspect. And our view is that we should put those into the district plan with certain requirements, what to allow or not to allow in those particular areas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Paul, I note your comment there that we have brought in consultants for what I would interpret as being a relatively straightforward process. You've already got consultants to identify these, and now we've got other consultants. Are we again conspiring against ourselves with having overlay after overlay of consultants, where surely we have people in the team that would know what our natural environment features are?
Unfortunately, we don't have people that are suitably qualified to be able to give the evidence on those particular aspects. But we needed to have suitable qualified people to assess those areas.
So, forgive me for not understanding. You've got the regional council that has gone ahead and established these criteria, and presumably some of the features.
Correct. So they've employed consultants to do that. I have to say it's exactly the same consultant, but it was 2 contracts. Okay. Can't argue with process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor,
If I could just add in something here, from my previous observations, that's it. What we're getting set up for is to do battle, because the proposed plan is publicly notified. There will be, if we have slid off the side of an issue or it hasn't been addressed properly, then another party will come along and challenge it, and then the decision on that provision will be made by the independent commissioners that sit in the hearings. And so if we haven't got the solid foundation to the rules that, or provisions that we have in our plan, we could be picked off. And less, I mean, the thing will be, I can virtually guarantee will be bent out of shape to some extent anyway by the time we get to the end of the process. It's just how it works in terms of the negotiation of appeals and so on when we get to that stage. So it's just, I think our staff are trying to set a solid foundation in terms of the content, so that what we have agreed on is something that will stay as intact as possible going through the process. Would that be right?
That's absolutely correct. What you see in this room is our staff and team. We're also cognizant we've got 4 private plan changes on the go. The first time ever that has been in this situation. So look, my team hands on heart are trying their utmost best, and we are on track. And notified our plan when it's set with our we're well within our existing budgets, and we are moving ahead at speed.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. I totally accept that, and a better understanding is that it's more a matter of understanding process and the reasons. So I totally accept what you're saying.
further hands up.
Just regarding to the feedback, we received 22 submissions, 10 submissions were in support, 9 amendments, and then there were 2 were in opposition. But in most cases, these are matters that we can deal with in the section 32, and because this is now one chapter which deals with the landscapes as well as with the features in them, it is quite tricky to be able to make the rules for both so that they don't clash with each other. And those are the matters that we got the submissions on. Are there any other questions?
Simply at this time.
I think that concludes natural features and landscapes. If now we have public access, Toby, do you want to do that, or do you want me to quickly rush through that? Okay. All right. So public access is another chapter that's part of the natural environment values there, and we tried to do some unique things in this district plan by including some what we call Esplanade priority areas on our maps, and I get to a picture of what that looks like. But what we're trying to do with this chapter is really promote and encourage public access to meet people's for recreational needs. So White already has quite a lot of public access through Esplanade reserves and obviously council reserves along waterfronts and things like that. These provisions are really about the tool and the district plan to make that happen, and often it happens through subdivision.
So, Catherine, for the team, could you explain what Esplanade priority area is?
Oh, sorry, yes, of course. Yeah. So about the beachfront, you have that 20 metre strip or what they Queen's chain along the front of the waterway. It could be a stream, river, lake, or the sea. And an Esplanade priority area is really that 20-metre distance from the Menai Water Springs back inland. And what that does is it provides public access, so an access strip, or basically public access so that people can utilise that. And you see that often when you go to the beach, and a lot of councils have got walkways and or just left it as reserve along the front. So the priority areas are the areas we're trying to promote to get some linkages to existing areas already Esplanade in their own titles, so that we can hopefully promote and encourage more public access to some of that areas. And we've kind of concentrated those Esplanade priority areas, if you have a look at them on the map, in areas where they're going to be utilised. So Mangawhai is a really good example. We've got a couple down towards Tahi, and got a couple there might be a few in Dargaville as well. So yeah, check them out if you want to have a look at where they are. This is a new tool that we didn't have in the district plan before. And really what we're trying to do there is just encourage through subdivision that these get created legally and then become an access tool.
And so the landowners will get an extra subdivision benefit.
Oh, so that's the incentivised subdivision rule. So we will be talking about that a bit later today. But there are some areas where landowners may not necessarily be able to subdivide easily. So we want to incentivise them to subdivide by acquiring the Esplanade priority area, or the Esplanade strip reserve along the waterfront. And so we're encouraging those through incentivised subdivision rules. So next, they might be like a rural block, for example. So yeah, so the feedback on this chapter in particular, I don't think there was a heap on it, but I'm going to put the slide here. We got 4 submissions, so not heaps of submissions, but it was largely supported. There were some requests to amend what at the moment, just to provide greater certainty of access, and then one submitter expressed concern over the creation of pest pathways.
Can you define that? Pest pathways, what do you mean? If you build a track, you're making a main highway for your fossils or something?
Possibly, I'm actually not sure what they meant by pest pathways. I have to go back to the submission, so we're sure to find out what by that. But I'm assuming it's about control of
pest plants, perhaps, might be more readily, like, so you're creating a space where privet and pampas.
Yeah.
That works in reverse too, because when I did the gum diggers track, if that bush was impenetrable, and when I built 3 kilometres of track, we were then able to go through there and track hundreds of possums and rats, and so it gives access in both regards. You know? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the word pest could be anything there, couldn't it? But yeah, effectively, we're not proposing to make any significant changes to the chapter. The provisions for the Esplanade and Esplanade reserves actually sits in the subdivision chapter, so we'll talk a bit more about that later today. But generally, the objectives and policies sit under the natural environment values chapter, because it goes hand in hand, obviously, with the coastal environment, which Paul's just talked about, and those areas of natural character. So, any questions on public access?
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Just to clarify, because I think there was somewhere in the submissions was that they made reference to the size of the balance area for these priority, like where you're giving someone a bonus.
Of the incentivised subdivision.
Yeah, because that ties into the stuff. But
yeah, so the idea is that if you're in a rural setting, that you can create a rural lifestyle lot, and the balance shouldn't be an issue because they're different. They're going to be different size lots. The idea is to try and take.
I was just thinking if they're like down Pay Peninsula and around Dartmoor, very possibly it's irrelevant what the other zoning of the land is or any restriction on the balanced area, because what you want is if we can get that extra connection, then without having to pay for it, other than providing a development incentive, would be a good way to go. I was thinking.
Yeah, to remove the balance. Yeah.
Or set it at the lowest threshold as for the most permissive zone provision.
I can't remember off the top of my head. I'll have a look after. I did think that we set a balance requirement, but maybe we said.
I might have just taken it from the comments in the reports.
Yeah.
Anyway, don't enjoy.
Yeah, but of course it's about incentivising. The key thing with incentivised subdivision is that we're enabling subdivisions so we can get that extra credit, because it might be the one property that's left in the whole length, the whole shoreline. And Manawa is a good example, because there are some property owners that do have, beachfront properties. They want that, like, a walkway or something that everybody can utilise, but whether they want to subdivide is the first thing, and using an incentivised provision might enable more subdivision, or already zoned, like an urban zoning. So, yeah, it's just trying to get that connectivity, and that's why we're trying to encourage it through the showing where the priority areas are, and more priority areas out there that we might get submissions on as well, which we haven't received any feedback on today. Okay. All right. We've probably got our consultants.
Time break.
After break.
What is the time? It's 11:30. Let's have a break till 11:40. Tea time.
Yeah.
On time.
Back up the copy of
About this well done, so we then it could be the time if we start at 11:40, because we're not due to start the next until 11:45. So there we go.
Right on time.
Good stuff, Catherine. Good.
Alana, do we need to do anything with the meetings?
Okay, I'll open it up. Thank you. All right, we'll reconvene our March 2023. We've got Jerome Wyeth coming on, is that right?
Yeah, Jerome, are you here?
Jerome, can you hear us?
Oh,
Yes, I can. Sorry, I'm just. Can you hear me all right?
Loud and clear.
Shall I probably do that? Okay, okay. My name's Jerome Wyeth. I'm a planner at Foresight Consulting based in Whangarei, and I'm going to do a quick overview of the ecosystems and indigenous biodiversity chapter for the proposed district plan. I'll briefly cover a background for the chapter, some of the key statutory requirements that need to be met, some of the issues of the plan, and most importantly, an overview of our recommended approach to get your feedback and direction on that. As you'll be aware, the cooperative has some unique and significant areas of indigenous biodiversity, and it's also been subject to extensive modification and loss of approximately 16% of indigenous vegetation cover remaining. As described in the material for today's review, the draft district plan released last year did not include the ecosystems and indigenous biodiversity chapter, and that was a deliberate omission due to uncertainty around the proposed national policy statement for biodiversity. And when that will come into effect and its requirements. That uncertainty remains ongoing, although it is expected that the NPS will come into effect sometime during 2023. The Council is now in a position where there is a need to include an ecosystem and indigenous biodiversity factor within the proposed district plan in order to meet statutory requirements in the RMA and higher order documents. This is key as you're asking for clear statutory requirements in the Resource Management Act and the New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement and the National Planning Standards and the Northland RPS around maintaining indigenous biodiversity and protecting significant natural areas, or commonly referred to as SNAs. Next slide, please, Catherine. So the current operative plan primarily manages indigenous biodiversity through indigenous vegetation clearance rules. These rules are somewhat unique to other common district plan rules, which typically manage indigenous vegetation clearance based on a threshold per year. The rules in the operative district plan they only apply to larger areas of indigenous vegetation, predominantly indigenous vegetation cover. So, for example, in the rules they only apply to areas that are 5 hectares or greater. And they also don't allow for any sort of permitted threshold in these areas. So as a result of the sort of current approach, the rules are very permissive in some areas, but also very restrictive. And they're also very complex in terms of how they apply to different areas of vegetation based on the size of the area, the height of the vegetation, and there's also quite different requirements for different overlays and different zones. Further, the current objectives and policies are not aligned or do not give effect to more recent higher order documents, namely the New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement and the Regional Policy Statement, and do not provide the level of protection required, particularly in the coastal environment.
Jerome, do those policies, national policies, become mandatory for councils in any case, do they, or is it something that we decide in our own right?
No, legally the requirements for the district plan to give effect to those higher order documents, which is interpreted as implementing, so you don't have little discretion, I guess, in terms of how you implement some of those directive policies.
So through the chair, whilst we have to implement them, we do have discretion as to our policy and rule framework that we have, but we have to implement the direction that the central government sets, but we can choose within limits what rules we have in our plan.
Thank you.
Next slide, please, Catherine. Yes, so in terms of the overall recommended approach, a key consideration for council is the approach to map SNAs. This is going to be a key requirement in the proposed national policy statement on indigenous biodiversity, and it's also set out in the RPS. Our recommended approach is not to sort of rush the mapping of SNAs in this approach through the PDP, and instead,
Brian, could you just explain what SNAs are for the team if they don't know?
Yeah, sorry. So SNAs is sort of an abbreviation for significant areas, natural areas, which is an abbreviation for areas of significant Indigenous vegetation and areas of significant Indigenous habitat, which is the key requirement in section 6C of the RMA. So it's basically about your areas that have significant ecological values. And as I said, the MPS, many councils have already mapped SNAs in their districts, and the MPS will require each district to map SNAs following a very robust, transparent, and collaborative process. So I guess one of our key recommendations in delaying that process is that it takes a lot of time, it requires a collaborative approach, it requires physical ground truthing where practicable. So, there is significant risk in terms of public backlash for rushing that process. So, I guess, the key recommendation here is let's wait until the MPS comes into effect, once those requirements are better known, and then see what's required at that point in time. Leaving that aside, we recommend that the objectives and policies are sort of refined to better align with the higher order documents, and the general approach would be to better protect, maintain, and restore Indigenous biodiversity in a way that enables people and communities to provide for their economic and social well-being. So there is a bit of a balancing act there in terms of the protection of these areas, but also not being unduly restrictive on land users. We recommend for simplifying the Indigenous vegetation clearance rules to be more common to what you see in other districts, so it'll be more based around the Indigenous vegetation clearance threshold per year, and having some more simple thresholds for different zones. We also recommend the operative plan that it has some sort of exemptions to the permitted activity thresholds for sort of critical activities like maintaining or establishing farm tracks, maintaining infrastructure, restoration activities, clearing vegetation that's was less than 10 years old and the area was previously cleared. So those kind of exemptions are kind of key to make sure that sort of common farming activities in your rural environment can continue to take place. That's the sort of approach in a nutshell. In some ways, it's a relatively simple chapter. There are some key requirements that need to be made through the objectives and policies, but the rule framework is relatively simple, I guess, compared to some of the other chapters. In terms of what it would look like,
if we could just pause there for a sec and just get some direction from elected members on this important point. Are you comfortable with us to delay the mapping of SNAs and to not include it in the proposed plan, noting that we will do it in the future when the national policy statement is finalised, because there's still uncertainty about what the final NPS may well look like. So we will not have SNAs in the plan, we will do it at a later date, and we canvassed this with the previous council, and MFE are talking about providing a war chest of funds for councils to access to engage with the communities in due course. So we'll go through that process in due course, but our recommendation is to not include the SNA mapping in the proposed plan.
Councillor Maddison, sorry, I was concentrating on the email. Sorry, my apologies.
Mr. Mayor.
Oh, thank you, ladies, before gentlemen. Some comments, go for it.
Thank you. My direction would be, if there is scope and funds available to make sure that we still engage with the community, then my preference would be to wait until we have certainty around it, because I know it is a very delicate issue and needs to be handled correctly.
Absolutely, and we all saw what happened up in the Far North last year when they rushed into it, shall we say, it's really backlash, and we don't want that.
Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, in addition to that, I mean, there are potentially conflicting national policy statements. Like, for instance, you could have a cabbage forest remnant, which is of ecological merit, on Class 2 land, as used to be the case just opposite Smith Canal Road on the state highway there. And the one national policy statement is telling you that you need to save the land for rural production, and the other policy statement is saying that you must protect it from use. So it would be good to have the opportunity for those things to be reconciled, so we have a more straightforward approach that we can take, which won't catch us out. So I think that it's not just the fact that that particular national policy statement is yet to be finalised, there's the reconciliation of as well. So yeah, and I guess it's just managing to kick the can down the road so we can deal with other stuff in the meantime. And perhaps it'll be the future council that will have to deal with it.
Councillor Madison?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, can I ask, don't we have already legislation that protects native forest? And so long as you leave 1 hectare, you can subdivide 2 small lots already. So how is this proposal other than a variation of the existing?
It is a significant change.
Okay, in what way?
Well, actually, perhaps Michael could answer in terms of the extent to which its fingers might intrude over the land, like the number of features in the area involved.
Chair, our technical expert Jerome has his hand up in the
screen,
so
I'll come to you, Peter, after Jerome has answered this.
Thank you.
Yeah, I should have actually mentioned the environment benefit subdivision rules as part of this package, although they'll be discussed in the afternoon session in relation to rural subdivision. They are kind of a key mechanism to sort of encourage that protection of these significant natural areas. I mean, the thing is, with those rules, you're getting incentivising protection of these areas through getting, subdivision entitlements. Sort of talking about here is more general sort of vegetation clearance rules, which would work in sort of tandem with those incentives. That kind of clarifies the point.
Further to Councillor Madison's point, though, there has never been a national policy statement on Indigenous biodiversity.
Sorry, speak up, please.
There has never been a national policy statement on protecting Indigenous biodiversity, so this is new.
Thank you, Councillor Paniora.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo Councillor Wilson Collins' comments around treading very carefully. I haven't had a chance to look at the Far North District plan in any detail for us to compare that. And well, from what I know, anecdotally, it didn't go down well, and Māori were disproportionately affected due to historical issues. And so if we were to have a look at incorporating those into our one, then we would also have to look at whether Māori are being disproportionately affected with it and how we would rectify that. Those are my comments. Thank you.
We talk about the removal of vegetation. What about the introduction of vegetation? You know where I'm heading with this? Carbon credit farms and the denigration of the landscape due to the introduced species. Would significant natural areas be protected from, or would this be stopped, in your view, or?
Right.
Sorry.
I was going to say how that would work. I've heard some concerns around the carbon forestry, which I think we would address through the rural chapters. How this, like, if there was to be, say, for example, clearance of vegetation to establish a carbon forest, this chapter would control that initial clearance of the vegetation. The rules in the rural chapter would then have some additional controls around carbon forestry, and depends how hard I guess you want to go and restricting that.
My specific interest in it is the Tangihua Ranges, and a significant area there has now been planted out in the these wilding pines, and it's going to change the whole look of that area. So
It's a good question, but just note that that's not Indigenous vegetation, so they wouldn't be covered by these rules.
Here's a question, does a significant natural area have to include Indigenous forest? Farmscape.
Expert Jerome?
Yes, so there are some pretty well established criteria around how you assess ecological significance. Currently, Appendix 5 of the Northern RPS has some criteria around how you assess it. It certainly needs to be Indigenous. It needs to explain certain characteristics like being representative of Indigenous vegetation in the district. So there are a range of sort of considerations that are typically assessed when determining whether an area is a significant natural area. So a wilding pine might qualify, for example.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, thank you, Jerome. To Councillor Lambert's point, now we now say for clarity that there is not a chance in Hales that Indigenous vegetation could be taken out in order to plant the pine farm.
So this chapter is will be managing vegetation clearance, not for the purpose of what the vegetation clearance is for. So if for that, using that example, if you want to clear some Indigenous vegetation to establish a carbon forest or pine forest, these rules will regulate that clearance, that initial clearance. But if we want to establish that carbon forestry, we can introduce rules through the rule chapter managing that land use.
Well,
that kind of helps.
Well, I mean, I think that I suspect that what we're getting at is that we want to protect the Indigenous vegetation, carte blanche, and we all have views on the other side of the replanting, but certainly we would be keen. I'd certainly be keen to ensure that there is protection of that Indigenous vegetation, very clearly stated.
Yeah, I guess so what we're recommending is, like, as I said, some of the existing thresholds in the operative district plan are extremely permissive. So potentially came in to clearance 5 hectares of Indigenous vegetation as a permitted activity. We would be recommending that those thresholds are lowered, while still having those sort of exemptions for your central farming type activities.
If we go to the next slide or two, we have some examples from the Far North District Council's proposed plan of what provisions may look like. Probably quite small, can't see them on the screen. Would you walk through them, team? That would be helpful.
Yeah, so this is kind of like a rule which sets out sort of permits clearance associated with a range of purposes. Some of those are around, maintaining existing farm tracks, etc. There's one around, regenerating Manuka and Kanuka, vegetation clearance to establish a dwelling, all these sort of essential activities, I guess you might want to call them, vegetation clearance associated with restoration, etc. So they're all sort of permitted. In the current district plan, you have a sort of similar list of this, and the NPSIB, the proposed national policy statement, also has some exemptions. So we need to undertake vegetation clearance to address public health and safety, for example. So you would be proposing something similar to this. So you've got your exemptions, and these aren't subject to the Indigenous vegetation clearance rules.
Comfortable?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I guess it's not necessarily the time for it, but I think some months ago I laid out a challenge for the staff to come up with a way of starting from the standpoint that I think that this Indigenous vegetation and so on should be treated and valued for its own intrinsic worth, and seen as a desirable thing for people to have. And the challenge for the staff to find ways of incentivising the fact that someone's got that on their property, that has a greater value than if they didn't have it on their property. And the thing is, we're not being asked to deal with that at the moment because the recommendation is that we kick the can down the road. And I guess we or the next council will get to deal with it in more detail in time.
Clarity.
That wasn't really a question. Please.
Yes, so the next these are just rules relating to sort of indigenous vegetation clearance in different zones. The farm-off approach, and it was reflected in their policies as well, they wanted a slightly more enabling regime around vegetation clearance on Māori land, recognising that they could be disproportionately disadvantaged by these rules. So this sets out the thresholds for clearance associated with Marae complex or residential units on treaty settlement land and Māori purpose zone. So interested in feedback from council if you'd like a similar approach. Then what I've done here is sort of reflected the fact that they sort of withdrew their draft SNA layers as I've sort of got a threshold for indigenous vegetation clearance within the SNA that's reasonably sort of conservative, 100 metres square per calendar year, and then a higher threshold if you sort of get an ecological assessment to determine that the area is not the SNA. So you've permitted up to 5,000 metres over a 5-year period in your rural zones and Māori purpose zones. We're not suggesting council take this approach. We recommend that the threshold for consent is significantly lower to what is in the operative district plan, but we wouldn't set different requirements based on whether you attain an ecological assessment or not. But interesting on feedback on that point.
Councillor Vincent?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would think that in terms of the threshold, it should tie into the minimum lot size in settlement areas and so on, where we've agreed if there's no reticulated sewerage available, that we need to have a lot size of 3,000 square metres in order to provide an area for effluent disposal plus a reserve area. You know, maybe it's possible to use an area of indigenous vegetation for your effluent disposal area, but there's a little detail there that you might want to review. Perhaps. I know what would be our consultant's view on that.
I've introducing a sort of threshold of 3,000 metres.
Yeah.
That's a significant improvement to the operative district plan. I mean, there isn't a magic sort of number here or right or wrong. It's sort of how conservative or permissive you want to go. By comparison, similar controls in Auckland and Whangarei are set at 250 metres square per year and 500 metres square per year. We would be suggesting something along the lines of 1,000 metres square per year. But obviously, we'll take your direction on this.
Yep, so it goes back to the direction of as simple and enabling as possible, as permissive as possible, and so the team are hearing that all the time and is looking to put in a regime as enabling and as permissive as possible.
I guess the other thing too is significant natural areas can vary, it can be wetland or forest, indigenous forest, for example, and then some indigenous forests are way more special than other areas. So you have to have a degree of flexibility in terms of how you assess what owners want to do, I would think.
I suppose I think we need to bear in mind, to me, it's the natural environment is the goose which lays the golden eggs for us in terms of the attraction of the area. So we don't want to just willy-nilly sacrifice it in the name of quick and easy gains for people too. So it's a balancing act for sure. I think that is part of the balancing to be done.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of one of the tricky. We have met SNAs, it's actually kind of more complicated because, you know, if we had a happy map, you could see some quite stringent thresholds around those areas, and outside them, you know, you'd be much more permissive. So you're in a situation where we need to identify a suitable trigger for that assessment to happen for a consent process. So it may be that you see that at 1,000 metres squared, for example, but once they undertake that assessment, they understand that the area is not that significant, and it may be easy to get consent. So it's really just around trying to find that appropriate sort of threshold where you would trigger that assessment, and potentially, you know, protect that area.
Your worship, if I could just, I think, just adding my 2 cents worth from my experiences, the threshold was based at Waikato around a permitted building site. So to make sure it was enabling enough to allow a building to be built without any issues as a permitted activity. And on that, required assessment. So that could be a basis for setting a threshold as well.
Yes, so that current operative plan is sort of has some exemptions for up to 500 metres clearance associated with establishing a dwelling. That could be a basis to work from.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jerome, to that last point, that's what you say is the current operative plan, but you're recommending here does not exceed 1,000 metres squared. So that is a significant change in upside, and I suspect that 1,000 metres, if you're working on flexibility, even if we're talking about a 3,000 square metre plot of land, it gives you sufficient to at least start. And did I hear you say at some stage per annum or per year?
Yeah, that's typically how the thresholds are based.
Okay. Well, I think there's a reasonable amount of flexibility and reasonable starting base there.
One thing I'd like to ask, if you've got a block of land that hasn't got a house on it, and you've got an SNA of, say, indigenous bush, so there's still an avenue there for you to say, well, look, I want to build in this part that gives me the best view for this expensive property I built with SNA on it. Is there an opportunity there to mitigate that by planting somewhere else on the property with more natives, for example? Are they absolutely locked up? That's what I'm saying.
Yes, 2 points here. One, as the UPSIB that does come into effect, it has a sort of exception for an existing lot where it's necessary to establish a dwelling. So that sort of is not going to be subject to the same stringent approach. Recognising, you know, you've got that title, you should be entitled to build a house dwelling on that land. And there's also the concept of offsetting compensation. So if you do clear some SNA, but you sort of compensate that by planting and restoring an area elsewhere, and you get a net overall sort of no ecological loss, there's a pathway for that to happen as well. And we'd certainly be proposing that sort of pathway through the policies. I've lost the description.
that this has been deferred for a later discussion, more or less, for the reason, because it is a big item.
Yeah.
Those things all need to be raised and looked at, you know.
Yeah.
At this point, I think we know there's a lot of questions and they don't get answered today.
No.
Yeah.
Correct. And look, from my perspective, I think there's clear direction in the room amongst elected members to not introduce ECNAs in the proposed plan. Wait till the NPSIP is promulgated and see what falls out of there. That's really clear direction from the staff team, and we can proceed accordingly.
Yep.
Yep. You'll like nothing and you'll be happy.
And that's the end of the open session.
Thank you. So now we go into the closed session. So,
Sorry. Yeah, we've just
yes, lunch, you're hungry,
So
Vincent.
connected to the local
internet here, so just give us once again, you might need to do the same.